In the bustling world of business, Logan Parker was always seen as an icon. A man clad in expensive suits with an airtight schedule, he had built the Swiftmart chain into a retail empire spanning towns across America. He firmly believed in his life philosophy: hard work will bring everything. But that night, during a secret inspection disguised as an ordinary customer at the Swiftmart Express branch in Silver Creek, Logan witnessed something that shook his once unshakable belief. He entered the store in a simple outfit, an old jacket, a cap pulled low, and no one recognized the powerful man among them. It was the night shift. The store was quiet, and the dim lights reflected the weary faces of employees diligently completing their tasks. Just as Logan was about to leave after a day of silent observation, he unexpectedly noticed Sophie Miller, a petite cashier with a gentle face. She quickly bent down and discreetly slipped a box of food into her worn-out fabric bag. Her clumsy movements and anxious glances around spoke volumes. No one noticed, but Logan did. Standing quietly behind the shelves, he watched her closely. Sophie hurried towards the back exit, clearly trying not to draw attention. This wasn't the action of someone stealing out of greed. There was hesitance, awkwardness, and something deeply pitiful in her demeanor. Logan froze. He had always believed that with the stable salaries at Swiftmart, his employees would never face situations like this. So why did this young woman have to sneak around just to take a box of food? That question echoed in his mind like an alarming bell. Was there something he had failed to see all these years? That night, Logan left the store without saying a word to anyone, but his heart felt heavy. The image of Sophie, her small figure, the food box, and her sorrowful expression haunted him long after. And in that very moment, Logan realized something profound. His real journey as a CEO had only just begun. Logan Parker sat alone in his office at Swiftmart's headquarters. Outside, the sky was a clear blue, and everything seemed unchanged. But inside Logan, something had already begun to shift. He couldn't shake the image of Sophie Miller, the young woman he had silently observed the night before. That girl wearing a Swiftmart logoed apron, always smiling as customers arrived and patiently answering every question, had now become a troubling question mark in Logan's mind. He recalled what little he had learned about her. Sophie Miller, 29 years old, a single mother raising 2 children. She had joined Swiftmart Express Silver Creek 3 years ago. She always took the late and weekend shifts, never missed a day, and was never late. In the eyes of management, she was the ideal employee, the kind any store would be lucky to have. But outside of work, did anyone truly know how Sophie lived? That question lingered in Logan's mind, refusing to leave. He felt conflicted. To him, work had always been everything. From nothing, he had built Swiftmart, from a tiny shop in Chicago into a convenience store empire recognized across many states. He always believed that with hard work, anyone could rise above their circumstances. But now, after seeing Sophie tirelessly working yet sneaking a small box of food home, that belief began to waver. Logan knew he couldn't just sit there and guess. He returned to Silver Creek, but this time in disguise as a new hire. No expensive suits, no aura of a busy CEO. Logan Parker became Luke, a temporary worker eager to learn the ropes. Over the next 2 days, he observed Sophie closely. She was always punctual, always cheerful when greeting customers, always willing to help her co-workers whenever they faced challenges. But beneath the surface, Logan saw more. He noticed the fatigue hidden behind her smile. He noticed her eyes, which always carried a hint of sadness, and he noticed her hurried steps as she rushed home after her shift. In an environment where everyone just wanted to finish their shifts quickly and head home, Sophie stood out as the only one who kept the store's warmth alive. Once, when an elderly customer accidentally spilled milk all over the floor while the other co-workers avoided the mess, it was Sophie who rushed over to help without a single complaint. Watching from a distance, Logan felt it deeply. She was the quiet soul of this store. And at that moment, he realized something even more profound. Perhaps across his vast Swift Mart empire, there were countless others, like Sophie, kind, dedicated people, who were slowly being forgotten amidst sales reports and profit margins. The biggest question now became clearer than ever. If even the best people were struggling just to get by, was Swift Mart truly fulfilling its mission? Logan knew he had to dig deeper. This story had only just begun. 2 days passed, and Logan Parker gradually became a familiar face among the employees at Swift Mart Silver Creek. As the newcomer, Luke, he quickly noticed the dull and harsh rhythm of life there. They worked like old, worn-out machines. No one seemed to care about anyone else except for Sophie Miller. She not only fulfilled her duties, but also genuinely cared for each and every customer. But ironically, it was precisely her kindness that made her different, and not in a good way in the eyes of others. Logan began to notice the subtle yet undeniable signs. Whenever Sophie went the extra mile to help customers or worked harder than expected, some co-workers grew resentful. They whispered behind her back, sneered, and sometimes even mocked her openly. She's probably just putting on a show to win Employee of the Month. So hard-working, yet stuck on night shifts, she must have her reasons. Logan heard everything, and with every passing moment he began to see the true picture behind what he had always thought was an ideal working environment. Here, kindness was mocked, while indifference and selfishness had become the norm. One evening after their shifts ended, Logan decided to follow Sophie home once again. From afar, he watched as she slowly pushed an old, worn-out cart along a deserted street. The area where she lived was lined with shabby apartments with faint lights flickering from small, narrow windows. Sophie entered her apartment and closed the door behind her. Logan stood silently in the street, unsure why his heart felt so unbearably heavy. It wasn't until his eyes accidentally caught a glimpse through a small window that he truly understood. 2 young children, Sophie's kids, rushed to embrace their mother tightly. Sophie took the box of food she had brought from the store and carefully divided every last bit between her children, ensuring they had a decent dinner. As for herself, she only drank a glass of water. Logan stood frozen, Sophie's frail back, her loving yet exhausted eyes, and the sight of the children happily eating their simple meal. All of it struck him deeply. Is working hard still not enough? Logan thought to himself. His entire life he had believed in hard work. He had believed that anyone could rise if they put in the effort. But in that moment, for the first time, he realized that some people, no matter how hard they tried, still got pushed into life's darkest corners. That night, Logan returned to his hotel. The luxurious room had never felt so cold and empty. He lay awake, unable to shake the images of Sophie and her 2 children from his mind. This was no longer just the story of one employee. It was the story of the very system he had created, a system that may have unknowingly forced people like Sophie to sacrifice far too much. And in that long, sleepless night, Logan Parker came to a decision. He could no longer stay on the sidelines. Tomorrow he would face Sophie, not as Luke, the new temp worker, but as himself, Logan Parker, the man who held the power to change everything. The next morning, Swift Mart Silver Creek began like any ordinary day for everyone else. Except for Logan Parker. Today, he was no longer Luke, the temporary employee. Logan appeared at the store in his usual manner, neat, well-dressed, and radiating the confident and decisive demeanor of a CEO. The moment he stepped through the door, all chatter ceased instantly. The atmosphere turned tense. Every employee, including the shift manager, froze in shock as they realized that the special guest standing before them was none other than the head of the Swiftmart empire. Sophie, standing at the cashier counter, was so startled that she dropped the pen she was holding. Flustered, she bent down to pick it up, her face pale and filled with confusion. Logan looked directly at her. There was no coldness, no sense of superiority often seen in powerful leaders. His gaze was different today, filled with concern and sincerity. "Sophie, could you spare me a few minutes?" Logan asked, his voice gentler than ever. They stepped into the employee break room. The silence there was so heavy that Sophie could hear her own heartbeat. Sitting across from the powerful CEO, her eyes reflected deep worry. "You don't need to be afraid." Logan began, his tone calm and measured. "I'm not here to scold or judge you." Sophie, still confused, remained silent. Logan continued this time, his voice dropping lower, heavy with emotion. "I've been observing you, not to find faults, but because I wanted to understand better. Sophie, I saw you bringing food home for your children. I saw you working tirelessly, always helping others, yet still struggling to provide for your family." Sophie's face slowly turned red. She lowered her head as tears began to stream down her cheeks. I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I just didn't want my kids to go hungry. I know I'm not allowed to take food from the store, but that night, I truly had no other choice." Logan sat silently watching her. At that moment, all his previous assumptions crumbled. Before him wasn't an employee breaking the rules, but a desperate mother fighting with everything she had for her little family. He took a deep breath, steadying his voice. "You don't need to apologize, Sophie. The one who should be apologizing is me." Sophie looked up, her eyes wide with astonishment as she stared at Logan. "All these years I believed that if you just worked hard enough, anyone could have a good life. But I was wrong. There are people like you, people who give everything they have, yet still face hardships they should never have to endure." He paused for a moment, then continued, his voice growing firmer. "And I can no longer ignore that. I want to change everything, starting right here." Sophie couldn't find the words to speak. She simply nodded, tears streaming down her face. But this time, they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief and hope. Logan stood up and reached out his hand to her. "Help me rebuild Swiftmart, Sophie, not just as a place to sell goods, but as a place that cares for and protects the people who give their all every single day." Sophie grasped his hand, her shoulders trembling with emotion. In that moment, an invisible bond formed between them, between a once distant CEO and an employee who had long been overlooked. And from that very second, Logan knew he wasn't just about to change a single store, he was about to change an entire way of life. Not long after the heartfelt conversation with Sophie, Logan Parker returned to Swiftmart's headquarters. But this time, he came back with an entirely different mindset. As he made his way there, Sophie's words echoed in his ears. The stories of sleepless nights, of choosing between paying the electricity bill or buying food for her children. All of it had become the fire that now pushed Logan to act. An emergency board meeting was called. Inside the grand meeting room, familiar faces gathered, the very people who had stood beside Logan throughout his journey in building the Swiftmart empire. They sat neatly in their seats, curiosity and a hint of caution on their faces, as Logan entered wearing an unusually serious expression. He didn't beat around the bush. As soon as the meeting began, Logan got straight to the point. We need to change, not just for profit or brand reputation, but for the very people who keep this system running every single day. The room fell silent. A finance director finally broke the tension. What exactly do you mean, Logan, change? What? Everything's been fine so far. Logan nodded slowly, but his eyes were sharp and resolute. Fine. Do you even know that a model employee like Sophie Miller still has to sneak food home just to survive? Do you realize that in Silver Creek and hundreds of other branches, there are people sacrificing far too much for the modest wages we pay? His words stirred the room. Some directors exchanged uneasy glances, but most remained unconvinced. Another voice spoke up, this time the head of HR. Logan, I get your point. But remember, SwiftMart is a business. We have shareholders' targets and profits to maintain. If we raise wages and offer extra support, we'll lose our competitive edge. Tension filled the room. Logan had expected this resistance. Still, he stood firm. He rose to his feet and looked each person in the eye with determination. I'm willing to accept that if necessary, I'll cut my own salary and benefits by 50% to offset the costs. But I will not allow another employee to live the way Sophie has. His words hit like a thunderclap. Those who opposed him fell silent. They had never seen Logan so resolute, but he wasn't done yet. Sure, we can squeeze a few million more dollars each year by tightening costs, but at what price? Losing our most dedicated people, trading away trust and loyalty just to satisfy financial reports. He walked to the whiteboard and boldly wrote 3 words. SwiftMart cares. This will be our future. A comprehensive support program for employees, higher minimum wages, child care assistance, emergency funds, and scholarships for their children. If you don't agree, I'm ready to fight for this until the end. The room fell completely silent. Eyes began to soften. Some directors nodded. One quietly said, "You're right, Logan. If we don't take care of our own people, what will we have left?" Finally, after a few tense moments, the board agreed. Logan let out a sigh of relief, not because he had won the argument, but because starting today, people like Sophie would no longer have to silently endure. He stood there glancing at the company logo on the large wall behind him. For the first time in years, Logan truly understood what it meant to run a business. Not just selling products, not just chasing profits, but creating a place where people are respected and cared for. Just 3 months after that pivotal decision, SwiftMart was no longer the company it used to be. Logan Parker's bold changes had spread across more than 400 branches, from the large stores in bustling city centers to small outlets like Silver Creek. A new spirit had awakened. And in Silver Creek, where it all began, the transformation was more evident than anywhere else. Sophie Miller was no longer just the silent night shift cashier. Logan personally promoted her to community support leader, a role meant to inspire and guide, ensuring every employee knew they had a voice and that the company stood behind them. That morning, Logan himself returned to Silver Creek. No disguises, no undercover role. This time, he came as his true self. As he stepped inside, greetings echoed all around, accompanied by bright, genuine smiles from the employees. The atmosphere had completely changed. Colleagues supported one another, and even customers could feel the warmth in every word and gesture. Logan headed straight to the counter where Sophie was busy training a new employee. The moment she saw him, she paused, her eyes sparkling with emotion. "Good morning, boss," she said with a truly relaxed smile. Logan shook her hand firmly. "Thank you, Sophie," he said sincerely. "Because of you, I finally understand what truly matters." The small ceremony that followed was simple, yet deeply meaningful. Standing before the entire Silver Creek team, Logan officially announced Swiftmart would permanently raise the basic salary. So, all employees would have access to the Swiftmart Cares Fund for emergencies, scholarships, and healthcare costs. Each store would have a community leader like Sophie to ensure every voice is heard. Applause erupted across the room. No one could hide their joy and gratitude. As for Sophie, she simply bowed her head, her eyes shimmering with tears. To her, this wasn't just a career promotion. It was a new beginning, a promise that her silent efforts would no longer go unnoticed. When the ceremony ended, Logan quietly left. But this time, he didn't feel heavy-hearted. Instead, he felt proud. On the way back, Logan thought about the path ahead for Swiftmart. He understood that these changes might impact short-term profits, but he also knew without a doubt, when a company puts people first, true and lasting success will follow. That day, Logan Parker, once a cold, numbers-driven CEO, became a complete leader, not just of a corporation, but of people. That afternoon, as Logan left Swiftmart Silver Creek, he didn't look back. Not because he didn't care, but because he knew deep down that everything behind him had already changed. On the quiet road outside, sunlight filtered gently through the trees. Logan walked slowly, and for the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about numbers or reports. All he thought about were smiles. Sophie's smile finally recognized. Her children's smiles, knowing their mother no longer had to struggle. And his own smile, realizing the greatest value a company can create isn't profit or market share, but in how it treats people. In this world, there are still many more Sophies out there, quietly dedicating themselves every day, facing hardships no one sees. They don't seek attention, they don't ask for favors. All they want is fairness, appreciation, and the chance for a better life. The story of Logan and Sophie may have ended, but the message they left behind will echo forever. And if you're watching this video right now, ask yourself, who will you be in this story? The bystander, or the one who dares to make a change? If you believe kindness, empathy, and fairness still matter in this world, help us spread this story. Don't forget to like if you were touched by Sophie and Logan's journey. Subscribe to join us for more heartfelt stories. And share this video with friends and family, because maybe, just maybe, you will be the next person to plant seeds of kindness where they are needed most. See you again in our next story, where every person deserves to be heard and every soul deserves to be cherished.